processes, they hold health information and valuable information like we talked about earlier, that
Yep.
cyber criminals, these bad actors, they like to go after it. And so I think having a cyber security or a cyber incident or incident response plan, however you want to title it, is key. I mean, it's important to have a process, like you talk about processes or having your policies, your procedures, whatever it may be, and on how to respond to those incidents. So if there is a breach, do you identify it? Do you disconnect those systems promptly that are impacted by it? Do you find out what that root cause is of it?
Well, I think we need to embrace AI as making us smarter. And the more you feel like you're in control of this movement, and the more you start to play around with it and get comfortable, like anything that's new, it's like when you had your first smartphone, you have to sit on the couch and play around with it and get comfortable with it. That there's that same learning curve. And I think when users feel like they're in control of the change and the movement, it's embraced better. And so, I think one thing to acknowledge is that we prefer to defer to processes in different platforms for a long time.
And I'm all about the patient experience, and anyone on this webinar that knows me knows that that's a big deal with me, is the patient experience. And so start small and start with things like automate what's repetitive and not what's relational, what's human. So things like appointment reminders, post-treatment instructions, like I was just speaking about, dictation of patient notes is a big one. Follow-up triggers, birthdays, anniversaries, all these things, you can automate all of that. And it's a baby step. It sounds like a lot, but it's actually a baby step to get used to AI. And then you're going to start noticing something. You're going to start noticing that you have more free time.
Annual expert panel webinar on cybersecurity, AI, automation, and the future of aesthetic medicine. What's next for med spas? Thank you for joining us and our panel of renowned industry leaders as they share actionable strategies, best practices, and valuable insights to tackle the unique leadership challenges faced by aesthetic professionals today. Welcome to our panelists for this webinar. With us is Chad Schiffman, Tracy Mancuso, Dr. Kiona Jones, and Shannon C. Barron. It is awesome to have the four of you with us. Thank you for taking the time and bringing your expertise to us.
Thank you.
So today, as I said, we're going to talk about the business of aesthetics leadership. And we're going to talk about this idea of cybersecurity, AI, automation, and the future of aesthetic medicine. What's next for med spas? I mean, it's such a fast-moving industry. There's so much evolution, so much change. In the short time I've been in this journey with you, I've been amazed at what I've seen and what's happening, and not just in AI, but just in so many different applications and processes of the business. So I'm excited tonight to see what new information we're going to have. This is a live event, so please engage with your peers, ask questions as we're going along. You can make comments in there of what you hear. We're good with happy face emojis, not too many grumpy ones, please. And I'm confident you will leave equipped with actionable strategies that ideally you'll be able to implement immediately. So make sure you kind of capture what I call sound bites, something you can grab, take away, and think about implementing, and/or remember what you heard and who said it and how you can reach back out to them to further expand upon something that's caught your attention. So before we dive in, though, let me just ask you this. When potential patients in your area search for treatments you offer, does your practice actually show up? Or are they finding your competitors instead? This is a major challenge for many aesthetic practice owners. You might be offering amazing services, but if you're not visible online, you're missing out on a steady stream of new patients. The good news? There's a fix. With the right digital marketing strategy, covering local SEO, targeted ads, and funnel-based content marketing, you can not only attract more inquiries, but convert them into actual patients walking through your doors. And here's the best part. Stick around to the end, because we've got something special for you, something to help you take your practice online presence to the next level. I assure you that it can, and I'm sure you're going to look forward to hearing more about that. But let me just go ahead before we jump into the actual questions we have for tonight. Let me take a couple of minutes to introduce myself and our panelists. And since I'm Starting it off, I'll lead off with myself. My name is Michael Walker. I'm your host for the webinar. As a leadership coach, professional mediator, facilitator, I'm passionate about helping set leaders and their teams up for success that matters, helping them lead themselves well so they can lead others well. With a focus on communication, conflict, and change, my team and I at Capstone Coaching help unlock and engage the full potential of an organization and its people. Our first panelist up for tonight is Chad Schiffman. Chad joined Healthcare Compliance Pros in 2014 and now serves as Director of Risk Management. With over 20 years of experience in healthcare, IT, and compliance consulting, he specializes in HIPAA and high-tech compliance, breach mitigation, and federal regulatory support. Chad conducts on-site audits, helps healthcare organizations avoid costly fines, and contributes to HCP's Forum on Compliance Trends. He's a published author with leading industry groups, holds degrees in medical specialties, healthcare administration, and has a master's in healthcare informatics. Welcome, Chad. Our next panelist up is Tracy Mancuso. Tracy, with over 30 years of experience in the aesthetics industry, has built a dynamic career in clinical practice, business leadership, and global education. She has managed her own practice, served as a clinical director in renowned clinics, and lead global clinical education teams. As a certified medical laser safety office, she is recognized internationally for advancing safety standards and optimizing treatment outcomes. Tracy collaborates with leading manufacturers to develop cutting-edge training programs while staying at the forefront of aesthetics innovations. Her passion lies in empowering others through continued patient care, mentoring fellow professionals, and championing women in the medical aesthetic industry. Our third panelist is Shannon Seabaron. Shannon is the co-founder of Cloud Med Spas and a devoted entrepreneur advocate. Shannon and her CMS team are creating a transformative impact on the healthcare industry. The CMS platform leverages automation efficiencies and a streamlined integration, including AI, to address multiple pain points, streamline workflows, and empower practitioners to work smarter, not harder. And that's a really good idea. Our fourth panelist up for tonight is Dr. Kiona Jones. Dr. Jones is a leading med spa business strategist who empowers owners to leverage AI for streamlined operations and long-term success. With a strong background in critical care, nursing administration, and academia, she transitioned from 13 years of bedside care to consulting and speaking in the aesthetics industry. She's helped launch over 50 aesthetic practices for solo practitioners, including doctors, nurse practitioners, and nurses trained through her mentorship programs. Dr. Jones is also the creator of the Minimum Viable Med Spa Framework, a lean, cost-effective model that helps new med spa owners offer in-demand treatments without a heavy aesthetic background. Her expertise in AI-driven automation and business strategy makes her a go-to expert in the field. So you'll see that on your screen right now, the main points for today's discussion. And I think based on what you've just heard about our speakers tonight, I think we're going to be able to hit these points pretty cleanly and in the kind of depth that we're hoping and looking to. We also have some great questions lined up for our panel today, and I'm certainly looking forward to how our panelists are able to respond to those. But I mentioned to you before, but I really encourage you to connect with us through chat. You can ask questions, you make comments of what you hear, happy faces, I was saying. But if you have a question, post it. I do want to tell you that if we have a question, I'm going to try and integrate it into the webinar tonight in real time. But if some reason I can't get to it, or it won't work, I just want you to know that if you post a question, our podcast manager, Alec, will have the question. We'll circle back around to our panelists, make sure we get an answer and get the answer back to you. So whatever you share with us will not hit the floor. We will make sure that we follow up with that. So having said all of that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we're going to get into the questions. And we are going to start off with Chad. And so Chad, the first question we have for tonight is, what are the most overlooked cybersecurity vulnerabilities in med spas? And how can owners address them before they become major risks?
Well, that's an excellent question. That's got a lot of nuance to it, of course. I mean, each practice is different, especially in the ones that I've consulted with. I've consulted with several in the medical aesthetics work realm. And so, as we know, medical spas and aesthetic practices work with sensitive information and patient health information, including medical records, personal information, payment information. Usually services are cash-based, and no insurance is submitted on behalf of a patient, or perhaps documentation is provided to the client so they can submit to their insurance company for reimbursement. We see that quite a bit lately where, they may, especially here in the United States, we see it a lot where they want, forms printed out so they could provide them to their reimbursement plans and different things like that for certain procedures, depending on what the practices are offering. So now, even though they're not generally considered traditional medical practices, especially here, medical spas and aesthetic practices are still attractive targets for cyber criminals. I think that's probably one of the biggest risks there. And these other bad actors who want to do ransomware attacks, phishing attacks, and other things that have been so prevalent. And I think this is because health information is the most targeted and sought after information on the market, especially on the legal market. It's valuable information. The value of it is skyrocketing just because you have so many identifiers in that health information that can potentially be used for identity theft and other incidents. So it's very, very tricky with those. With health information, especially if it includes financial information in any way. So some of the most often overlooked vulnerabilities that I see include weak passwords and authentication. So lack of unique user IDs and strong passwords, or workforce members when working with health information, maybe sharing desktops and just sharing logins with no active tracking on knowing what exactly is going on, which often causes, desktop one to include a password such as MedSpa2's password or something, something simple and not anything complex. And just because for workflow purposes. So we see that quite a bit initially when organizations come to us for help. Another thing that we'll see are unsecured Wi-Fi networks within the practice itself. So where guests can access the same network, or using the same networks to are used to access health information, for example. So like there's not a segregation there of, guest network versus health information network, for example. And that sometimes causes some issues, especially if, let's say, a practice has a listening devices like the ambient devices and stuff like that that are being utilized. So like, hey, Alexa, or different things like that can be problematic and easy to hack. So some of those things are really a challenge for med spas. When I go in and do like a security risk analysis, I often see there are outdated software and systems and missing antivirus and anti-malware type software, or maybe patches aren't up to date or different things like that. They might be just on a real simple network, but forgetting that, hey, even though they're accessing a cloud-based system, they still are a potential risk and a potential target. A lack of employee security awareness training is probably one of the biggest things with phishing attacks and different things like that can happen. That's true in the healthcare industry as a whole. And I'll try to wrap this up. I can talk about this forever. It's one of those topics. So I'll just move on a little bit. So improper disposal of patient health information is a big one. Social media, not aware of Internet of Things devices within the facility. And now, as we're going to talk about, and there's some experts on here who are well-versed in AI, there's some risks with how AI is potentially being utilized. Usually if information is being uploaded and shared, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later, I believe. So things to address that, I think it all starts with performing a risk analysis, having a risk management plan and policies in place, such as, unique user ID, strong passwords, requiring encryption for your network internally. Different strategies like that are so beneficial. Knowing what your threats and vulnerabilities are and having a plan to mitigate those is probably the biggest thing I can recommend. don't forget about the antivirus and anti-malware software. Keep separate networks. It's a big reward for, I mean, if you have a guest network, it does wonders for guest satisfaction when they're visiting the practice, but it also should be separated from your other network that does house health information. And then be safe AI and safe social media practices. Proceed with caution when using those devices. Don't post things, don't share things that you wouldn't do in a coffee shop without a consent. So those are some of the biggest risks that I see currently in the med spa space and aesthetic practices.
Thank you, Chad. Certainly, well covered. Thank you. I think about, this whole thing of risk management. There's things that I do a lot of work in the entertainment world, and we're doing events and stuff. We do risk management on everything from all the high racks and everything, and what, considering what the wind's going to look like and what the weather and how this is going to happen, and power and outages and all these things. And it just feels like, and I'm guilty in my own companies, that I sometimes am a little too cavalier with having established protocols to protect not just my company's IP, but my customers' personal information. And I think this is a season now with AI that if it was something that was kind of perceived, if you will, optional, which we know it isn't, boy, is there ever a time when it's not. So thank you very much, Chad. I think you've set the tone for where we're going to be going today. So Tracy, the next question I've got is for you. And the question I have for you is, what are the biggest misconceptions med spa owners have about AI and automation in patient care?
A great one. And I will preface this by saying that I may be one of the only panelists that's not jumping in with 2 feet and 2 arms. I'm very cautiously optimistic that AI is going to be good for us in the aesthetic space, but there's some big challenges we have to overcome first before I'll really truly embrace it. The first one is basically people are worried about, will this replace my staff? That's the first thing I keep hearing, especially amongst those of us who have larger staff members. And they have to understand that AI automation won't replace your team. It actually amplifies your team if done correctly. And this automation helps with things like follow-ups, appointment reminders, intake forms, and all of this will free up your staff to actually focus on delivering superior personalized human care and improving that patient experience with other little human touches that you do day to day. The second thing is that it really is automation of the impersonal. And that's what's really important to understand, is that you need to do this right and make sure that if you do it right, it will automate everything that you don't want to do anyway. And it feels consistent and not cold to your patient. And so patients really appreciate a reliability of things like reminders and instant confirmations and routine touch points and things like that. All of that can be automated. And when this is done correctly, automation actually will enhance the human element because it makes space for things that are meaningful in personal engagement rather than being tied up with all these administrative tasks that we have to do day to day. And then the last thing is the big thing. And this is after working with so many clinics, is that they think it's plug and play. So, hey, I'm going to get this AI automation and it's going to come in, it's going to make everything better. And I'm going to tell you, AI automation isn't magic. You need to clean up your processes first. So if your consult to booking flow is a mess, automation will just scale that chaos. And so your AI needs structure, it needs direction. It's not a force of its own, it's a force multiplier, and it's not a fixer if your processes are in deep repair. So you need to really take a look at your business and say, how will this fit in? How can I make this work with my current processes? What do I need to change? And then go from there, not just throw something in and hope for the best. So those are sort of the misconceptions that are going on about AI right now in the field of aesthetic medicine anyway, and bridging on to regular medicine as well.
Thank you, Tracy. It's not like, if you think about, we all have, we set up our companies, we have a vision for our business, that long-term view, how we're going to make a difference. But how many people have a vision that actually incorporates AI into that? Because we never really addressed it. And so if we haven't, then we probably need to look at that. What is that vision we have for AI in terms of how it's going to benefit the core vision of the organization, and then kind of reverse, is what I'm hearing you say, is, and then reverse engineer it back to today.
Exactly. And I'd love to hear from our participants what they think is going to be troubling when they try to implement AI. Just put that in the chat. I'd love to hear from them and see what they think as well.
Thank you. Great ideas. Thank you. So as I say, folks, feel free to do that, and I'll certainly carry up those comments. I can see those. I'm going to go ahead to Shannon. And the question I have for you, Shannon, is how can cloud-based systems help med spas manage multiple locations and scale their business efficiently?
Thank you. And then just to give everyone a brief overview of what we are, because it might not be intuitive, is Cloud Med Spas. The best comparison is that we are the Airbnb of the healthcare wellness med spa space. So we've created a platform with which owners of healthcare med spa spaces can now basically rent out underutilized space, larger footprints, scale. We're serving two marketplaces: the space owner who has the incremental space, and the independent aesthetic practitioner who is seeking space. Hence the large market boom of salon suites and independent real estate franchises that are supporting that practitioner that wants to be independent. So we're sort of the bridge and the resource and the platform with which everyone can benefit from sort of disrupting a lot of the pain points that currently exist in the med spa space, which is risk. From my perspective and dealing with my clients, technology and automation is reducing overhead, basically. Post-COVID, we're all revisiting our carrying costs and our risk. It's a constant lurking beast. We need to reduce that overhead, and sharing the resources via a cloud system is the smarter way to go. We've seen private practices do that by sort of collaborating resources to negotiate better insurance terms. We see the same benefits happening in the aesthetic space. So why take on more risk, device ownership, space, overhead, HR, employee management, marketing costs, when you can reduce those heavy, high risk carrying costs and run your business in a different way. So we've sort of, most of my clients, when I talk to them, they've already considered this option, whether it's the space owner who's considered renting their space, changing their business model, because as a med spa owner, they're struggling with the huge investment they've made, and the HR management and the marketing costs are higher than their profitability. So they can transition to having 3 clients to having 30 renters renting their space, collaborating from an inventory standpoint, and getting better costs on product. Just a smarter way of running their business and reducing the headaches of managing people. At the end of the day, when people carry the patient relationship, we see practitioners leaving med spas, taking patients with them, non-competes, med spa owners trying to control their employees. It's clearly a business model that is struggling and not working. And so we really see ourselves bringing a tool to the marketplace that sort of disrupts sort of this old practice and way of doing things, and providing a solution for all parties involved. Aesthetic businesses can scale without taking on high demands of ownership costs. We can control profit variables by leveraging shared resources. Opportunity is highest when you can leverage negotiations of a larger network. And that's truly what Cloud Med Spas via our cloud is bringing to our clients.
Thank you, Shannon. As I hear you sharing that, I'm thinking that idea, if I was going to sum it up, that cloud-based creates an opportunity for economy of scale opportunities, where you can suddenly lever assets differently and smarter and with greater ROI attached to it. And yeah, I mean, hands up, anyone doesn't want that. I'm just sort of thinking. So Dr. Jones, I'm going to head over to you. And the question I have for you is, how can AI-powered virtual consultations improve accessibility for patients while maintaining a high level of care? Now we're getting into it, aren't we?
Well, first of all, Shannon, I love your business model, by the way, especially working with solo practitioners myself. That's how I came up with the minimum viable med spa framework, because I started with this large overhead, multiple team members, and I realized I did not enjoy it. First of all, I liked being in leadership, being paid as a salaried employee, but when it came to running my own business, it was not enjoyable. In addition to that, I had this huge overhead, and a lot of it rested on me as far as my employees, their productivity. If I wasn't there, it was low. It's just horrible. So this is just so good to hear. And so essentially, what I did was okay, so AI started, the 3.0 version of ChatGPT anyway, launched in November of 2022. And I was definitely in a position where I was like, I got to figure something out, and I got to figure it out quickly, because I found myself in a position where I felt like I was working back in the hospital, where I was focused on tasks, administrative things that were not revenue drivers in my business. And I knew I needed to find a way to leverage artificial intelligence so I can have more time to have that quality, experience for my patients. And I felt like I wasn't doing that. I started getting really inundated with tasks versus being able to create an experience for my patients and my practice. And so that's kind of how I dived into artificial intelligence. So for me, using an AI agent has allowed me to have like an assistant. And it's an assistant that never forgets what my patients say, an assistant that can curate customized messages, whether it's text messages, emails for my patients, that is very specific to them. I think about it like, and I hope it's not freezing. Is it freezing? Is my Wi-Fi freezing? Or you
Yeah,
guys
but your
able-
audio is fine.
Okay. Okay. And so essentially we have, consents that are very standard, right, for all patients. But if you, especially I'm in the more holistic space, wellness space. So if I have someone who comes in who has a certain set of labs, who has these chief complaints, then I want to make that specific to them versus going all the way around the world before I get to the real issue and how I can help correct it for them. And so AI has been able to be like that assistant for me. And so creating the workflows, and I like what Tracy said about just, basically trash in, trash out is what I got from what you said, Tracy. And I totally agree, because it really made me sit down and look at my protocols and really think through my client journey and how I wanted their experience to be when they are working with my practice. And so the AI has been essential, especially the agents has been essential with providing that for my clients and for me, right? And so when I go and I get off of a call and I have, just let's say, for example, a note taker on, and then I can feed that to my agent who can remember that about that client. So when they follow up with them, they can say, okay, well, I know Sarah likes to come in the afternoon. She mentioned she worked 9 to 5, whatever. So when they're contacting her to schedule that follow-up appointment or to schedule that, 3-month talk session or whatever, they're able to be specific for Sarah versus just all of my clients in general. And so I really have learned to just like record everything, feed it to my AI, so it just can personalize the experience for my patients. And I feel like that already antes everything up for my clients, because it's like, oh my gosh, like you feel so special and considered, and like, not that you just treat it like everyone else, but then you have this more concierge type of experience during our consultations and moving and beyond that.
Thank you, Doctor. You remind me of the saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And AI, what I'm hearing is, gives you a caring mechanism that not only has an authentic, if you don't invest in it, it won't come across authentic. But if you do, it can be something that adds value to your customer journey and relationship, and ultimately your bottom line. Thank you. Let's go ahead, Chad. I've got a question for you.
Sure.
And the question is, with the growing use of AI-driven patient management systems, what legal and ethical considerations should practices keep in mind?
Well, that's actually a very good question. For me, it's legal is what types of information you're sharing into what type of platform and how is it secured. So in other words, is it going to an open network? I mean, that would be the first and obvious thing, is you don't want information just going to an open network or potentially getting out to a country that, let's say, you don't want access to get, like some of the open AIs could potentially do. So you want to make sure that there are safeguards in place, or that the tools are built such that it's more of a closed AI, if you will. The other, and again, I'll probably talk more about, that's where we could see a lot more potential risk, is that the information is getting hacked or stolen that way, or obtained impermissibly that way. So there's that. And then also the use strategy within the organization. Are workforce members trained on the proper use of it? Do they know what they're supposed to do, what they can't do with it? Similar to any other process within the organization, I think it starts with making sure that they're properly trained and having policies there. With regard to, say, like in content, there's pushes to include, hey, look, this information was generated with the assistance of AI, for example. And I think the same is true, like in healthcare organizations, say, with ambient listening devices is a perfect example of that, to where they can do the dictation for you and they can pick up on it. The patient has a right to know that there is an ambient listening device within that practice. And to me, ethically, that's probably one of the biggest considerations. And make sure that you have their authorization for that to be utilized. But overall, I'll be honest, I'm actually a big fan of AI, a big proponent of it. We've learned to really embrace it and build it in a, I'll use the term HIPAA compliant manner for what we use it for, to help us improve our workflow. We found that we've been able to put in roughly 15 to 20% of the work up front, let AI do, 65 to 80% of the work, and do the other 10 to 15, 20% on the back end, making sure that we like the output or adjusting it accordingly. And we've just seen a lot of benefits with it. But it really does start with making sure that it's set up properly and used for its intended purposes and not impermissibly.
Thank you, Chad. My medical doctor started using AI for her notes, and they asked me at the front end, if I was okay with her doing that. And then we got talking. She said she has two young kids, a 6 and a 7-year-old, and she says, for the first time since I've been a doctor and had kids, I've actually been able to come home at the end of the day and play with them, because now I got to come home and do all my notes and everything. I still have to review them, but she says what we're really doing now is fine tuning how the data moves through to the support functions that need to have separate steps made, and then protecting the integrity of what's being communicated. So yeah, I don't know if any of us could jump in an F1 Formula racing car and go around at the same speeds as any of those drivers. We'd all could probably get around the track, but it's going to be a lot slower, because we don't want to kill ourselves. We don't want to run off the track. And I think AI feels a lot like that. Just, it doesn't have to be at full tilt. We can come onto this gradually. But I think the key to this that I'm learning, what I'm hearing, is that just like you have a CPA for an accountant, you have a lawyer. We're talking about the folks that you're listening to online. These are the kind of people that are the experts that can coach you, if you will, coach you through the journey of the transition that we're talking about. So I think it's important that this becomes a team member that may not be hands-on in the shop, but are hands-on on the shop, if that makes any sense. I'm going to go to you, Tracy. And the question I have for you is, how can AI-driven documentation tools improve accuracy in clinical record keeping while reducing administrative workload? I guess I kind of set that question up, didn't I?
You did. And actually, we have a question from one of the participants, and this kind of leans into everything that I'm going to talk about, because Dr. Jones talked about how she's using it, and Shannon kind of mentioned that the cloud med spas use it, and Chad's, telling us how to be cautious. So this kind of ties it all up. And so really what we can do with AI right now that I like, and it can do a lot more than what I like, but these are the things that I like, is that it can do real-time voice to text for clinical intelligence. And that's really the AI tools can transcribe all of your clinical or treatment sessions in real time. And this is really important, real time, meaning that I don't have to sit down with a whole stack of files at the end of the day and try and recall everything when I'm really tired and I just want to get home. So they don't just transcribe, though, they actually contextualize this. And Dr. Jones touched on this, is that Let's say I said to my note taker, I treated the lower face with radiofrequency microneedle using a 2 mm depth and pulse mode 3 power 7 or whatever. The AI will actually place that into the correct treatment notes section, and it will autofill all the parameters like the pulse mode, the depth, the treatment zones, etc. Plus, I can actually add linked photos if I've synced that to my imaging software. And this means that there's actually less room for human error during your charting. It's done immediately. There's no skipped steps or skipped areas. There's no vague notes that will burn you in an inspection, as Chad will tell us. And there's no need to struggle with handwriting legibility, which is a huge issue in our field. So really, it's great, but it's only as great as you're reviewing it. So you can't just rely on AI and hope that it's done it properly. You have to review those afterwards and just be kind of like a teacher and make sure that you check over its homework. The next thing is really the time saving that you'll get. So it really can generate that aftercare immediately after the appointment, and it will send post-care instructions to your patient with a follow-up appointment for them. And this means there's no missed information to your patients, because how many times did they leave a clinic and they don't have their post-care when we were doing all this manually? And you're like, oh, darn, I got to call that person back and make sure, or even worse, they end up doing something on their own. And then the last part is really about audit readiness and legal protection. So these systems actually track changes, they timestamp them, and this often includes some sort of security audit or tag log that will be with it. And this becomes really critical when you go through something like a regulatory inspection, which I help a lot of clinics through. It's very difficult to get through those Health Canada inspections, or if there's a medical board inquiry, which can happen. So the things that I love that AI can do are all of these things, and that's how Tina, your question was really about how can I start using AI? These are some areas you can start using AI immediately. And if, again, like I said before, your processes are in place properly.
Thank you, Tracy. So, and thank you, Tina, for your question. That's awesome. And I think we'll have more information will support that question. But I think, so there's application. Let's just shift gears a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about selection. So the next question I have up for Shannon is, what are the key factors to consider when choosing an AI-powered practice management solution?
Yeah, and this is exciting, obviously. We've been in practice for about 6 years, and we've heard feedback from so many practitioners in our network who are unhappy with specific EMR or different platforms they're using that are inefficient or unadaptable. I think we all know a lot of the practitioners, without insulting the medical space, are not necessarily tech savvy, right? I think we can all sympathize with each other about that. My father was a general practitioner growing up, and I watched him do hours of dictation. And it was so time consuming, and admin was not his forte. So going forth, I think the key word I just stick to is simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. And so how can we make it easy to adapt to? How do we create systems that are just covering the needs of our practitioners, especially in the medical aesthetic space, which are different than the medical space? And I think a lot of these platforms have been spin-offs from the medical healthcare space, which is completely different than what our aesthetic practitioners need. So we're really excited to sort of, we see ourselves fulfilling all the needs of the practitioners who are using the locations in our platform to empower themselves with their own entrepreneurship and running their own businesses. And after all these years of hearing the pain points of what practitioners need to succeed, we'll be launching an AI-enabled EMR in the next 6 months to our practitioners. That is purely, we sort of say it's by practitioners for practitioners. It's simple. We want them easy to adapt to. Everyone's getting more comfortable with ChatGPT and tools that are in the marketplace that are really efficiently streamlining their admin needs. And so it needs to be simpler. It'll be encoded, obviously to enable for notes, photos, scheduling, and still be HIPAA compliant, and still meet those needs of obviously compliance that Chad touches on. So I think the adaptability of technology in healthcare, it's always there at the cusp, but there's always, all these roadblocks in place that is keeping healthcare and medicine from advancing forward and taking advantage of all of the ease we see with technology, being able to make the processes and time. We want time to go back to the patient. We want it to be taken from admin, and AI is really a great space to empower our practitioners with that. So I think really looking for those platforms out there that are easy for our practitioners to adapt to is going to be key, because it's wonderful to have a great tool in place and a great resource, but how can our users, what is the adaptability of our users? It needs to be simple.
Thank you, Shannon. Yeah, it's you made a comment with your time with your dad and stuff. I always think, from what my perspective as an entrepreneur in the leadership world, it feels like most medical professionals are arguably accidental entrepreneurs. And they really never have passion. If you took a business course in university, it was by mistake, because it really didn't help where you were heading. But it's like there's this, so you need to have, just what makes sense to me is you need to have parallel experts in the areas that are outside of your 20% of what you're great at. And this is going to be one of those areas that's really emerging on as its own lane, as well as some of the ones we talk about, whether it's HR or administration or whatever the business aspects, accounting. So application, selection, let's talk a little bit about impact. So Dr. Jones, in what ways has automation helped your practice provide a more seamless and luxurious patient experience? That's a fun word to say.
Yeah. Yeah, because most of your clients, they have to have some residual income to be able to pay for these type of services. That's just the truth of it. And in that case, they want to have a great experience. They want to feel luxurious when they come into your practice. So for me, I think of it like them having their own beauty or wellness concierge that knows all about them, that's able to contact them at the right time, that even can add a little wit to their experience, meaning they can crack a little joke in the journey. Like you could really train your AI to do all of these things. And I think having one less thing to remember about your wellness journey, or even if it's, more related to like tox or filler treatment, even having some one or something that is able to really kind of guide you through that, so you don't have one other thing to remember, creates a luxurious experience for my clients. Not only that, what I found is that, say for example, as a solo practitioner, sometimes they may call and they might not be able to reach me, or sometimes, unless it's an emergency, sometimes they may send a message, a DM, and not be able to reach me. Having a AI agent be able to respond to their messages at any time, be able to follow up with them at any time, it just creates, in my opinion, a feeling of belonging, a feeling of being identified, like a tailored experience. So that alone within itself create more luxury for the clients, because they don't feel like they are left out. They're always considered in their journey, in their wellness journey, or their aesthetic treatments or whatever. They feel considered. And I never thought about that until I started doing the research on the fact that, most small business owners don't have time to really provide that experience for their clients. And in most cases, they don't even get the phone answered on the first call, versus if you at least have some type of AI agent that is at least able to respond, or text them when they call and your practice is closed. It just creates a better sense of thoughtfulness throughout the experience for the patient.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. And that word, I love. I'm going to, I'll give you credit the first time for using that word, but then I'm gonna borrow it. But the idea for me has always been, it's easy to meet somebody's needs. It's a little more difficult to exceed them. It takes a little thinking about. But when it gets really exciting, when it gets luxurious, is when you unexpectedly delight them, and they see you in a way that they can't wait to tell all their friends and can't wait to come back. And that's what we're talking about. And what I'm hearing, that AI has capacity to do some of that heavy lifting that is not your forte, probably, if you're if you're not energized by people, rather energized by stuff, then that could be a real heavy load. So Thank you very much for that, Dr. Jones.
It can be, and also just for those who are in attendance, you know, you don't have, I'm not a tech person, by the way, at all. I mean, when I say at all, at all. But because of this emergence of AI, there's a lot of no-code tools that are out there. You guys just don't know about it. So to respond to that person in the chat who said they want to know about how they can do it in their business, don't think you have to learn tech per se. Just high level. If you know your business, then you can integrate AI into it for sure. You just need to know the tools that are out there to do so.
Yeah, it's bite size. Just one bite size. You know, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. This thing is kind of a big elephant in some respects. And so if we think of application, then to selection and impact, let's go back to security and back to Chad. And what steps can med spa owners take to create a cybersecurity response plan in case of a data breach? Well, they never happen, do they, Chad?
Well, breaches happen.
I know.
Especially, yeah, with practices, you know, they hold health information and valuable information like we talked about earlier, that cyber criminals, these bad actors, they like to go after it. And so I think having a cyber security or a cyber incident or incident response plan, however you want to title it, is key. I mean, it's important to have a process, like you talk about processes or having your policies, your procedures, whatever it may be, and on how to respond to those incidents. So if there is a breach, do you identify it? Do you disconnect those systems promptly that are impacted by it? Do you find out what that root cause is of it? Was it an impermissible disclosure? Are you experiencing a ransomware attack? You know, there are so many different things that could happen. So first step would be to identify it and make sure everything is contained properly, and then work with those professionals to start mitigating it, whether it's someone on the IT side of things. Maybe there's some weak systems, some weak patches that need to be addressed. So, but I think by having a plan that really lays out that process, like how are we going to respond to it? How are we going to mitigate it? How are we going to resolve it or prevent it from going on again in the future? What is our response going to be to our patients, to our clients? How are we going to make sure that they understand what happened and what we've done to correct it and prevent it going forward, or at least lessen the likelihood of it? Let's be honest, these cyber attackers are coming after you every day. They're looking to send you a malicious link in your email. They're hoping that you click on that wrong little web page and say, congrats, you won. And next thing you know, you're scrambling to figure out what the heck is going on. So, but just having that plan and making sure, again, that your employees are trained on what to look for and how to report those things, I think is key. And it can help, especially as we start using more technology.
Thank you, Chad. Yeah, it's not an if, it's a when at some level. And I think there's just so many points of entry. A comment that I heard at another webinar we're talking about it was in the dental field, actually. And just talking about sometimes companies, when they do have an attack, they're too quick trying to get things back up, and they open up portals that haven't been properly closed, I guess would be easier to put it. So I think that's why you need an expert. You need, you know, if you have a problem, it's not about bringing somebody, like if you have a fire in a house, you bring in experts to how to do the remediation of your home, and the very same thing happens here. So I think that,
yeah,
thank you, Chad.
Yeah, well, I would just add real quickly that don't be afraid of getting a cyber insurance, a cyber liability insurance, because they are so instrumental in the event of a breach. So a lot of times they'll do that. We talk about heavy lifting in the event of a cyber attack, and they are so invaluable for organizations. So that'd be one of my biggest recommendations, is consider that if you're worried about a risk.
Excellent. Thank you, Chad. That's great advice. Tracy, next question I have for you is, what advice do you have for practices hesitant to adopt automation due to concerns about patient personalization? Well, that's going to kind of cover a few areas we've been talking about.
Absolutely. And you know, I'm all about the patient experience, and anyone on this webinar that knows me knows that that's a big deal with me, is the patient experience. And so start small and start with things like automate what's repetitive and not what's relational, what's human. So things like appointment reminders, post-treatment instructions, like I was just speaking about, dictation of patient notes is a big one. follow-up triggers, birthdays, anniversaries, all these things. You can automate all of that, and it's a baby step. It sounds like a lot, but it's actually a baby step to get used to AI. And then you're going to start noticing something. You're going to start noticing that you have more free time. And that free time means that you have time for more personalization and more human time with your patients. So you can add a few extra minutes onto your consults. You can walk them to the door instead of having to rush them out. You can bring them a hot beverage or water when they arrive. In one thing that happened at a clinic that I recently went to is they slipped a little handwritten note. It was actually handwritten in cursive, which was even more impressive. And it was handwritten, and it was after I purchased something, and it was slipped into my bag. That's such a personal touch. And I know she wrote it ahead of time. I'm well aware of that, but it was just the thought that they actually did that. And you can also follow up with a quick video call or a little voice note. So those things are very personal, and they actually get to hear or see you, which is really nice. So just remember that automation, as you're stepping into it, it's not about doing less for your patients, which a lot of people think that is what the case is. It's about doing more of what matters. And if you were listening to what Dr. Jones was saying, is that's exactly what she was saying, is she's able to do more personal things for her patients. It's more about not replacing that human touch, but replacing all the static tasks that get in the way of the ultimate experience with your patient.
Thank you, Tracy. I think this whole idea of just being, the word that jumps to mind for me now is being intentional. Like we always, there's 100,000 things we could do every day, but we need to be intentional of a couple of things that are going to help advance what is our greatest priority now. And if finding more time for yourself is, and you're overwhelmed and overburdened, that might be a good thing to be intentional about. So I'll park that there because I'll go off down a road on that we don't need to go down. So I'm going to go back over to Shannon, and a question for you is, how do you see automation influencing pricing models and profitability in aesthetics industries?
You made a great point, Michael, and Tracy, you touched on this as well. I think we need to embrace AI as making us smarter. And the more you feel like you're in control of this movement, and the more you start to play around with it and get comfortable, like anything that's new, it's like when you had your first smartphone, you have to sit on the couch and play around with it and get comfortable with it. That there's that same learning curve. And I think when users feel like they're in control of the change and the movement, it's embraced better. And so, I think one thing to acknowledge is that we prefer to defer to processes in different platforms for a long time. Instead of renting my apartment over my garage by myself, I would prefer to put out an Airbnb because Airbnb covers the liability, they're vetting the renter, they're managing the payment process, all of that. I'd rather do my taxes through TurboTax. They're accepting the liability sort of if anything's wrong in the process of, doing your taxes and putting in all the right information. So I think people prefer to pay a fee to and use these services and these resources to do the work for them. And so software really does streamline the work. And so it's wonderful to embrace these tools to do this tedious work that we don't really love anyways. And so space owners who use our platform, they avoid the liability because we cover the regulation for required of the renters, the aesthetic practitioners. And so they're strictly renters and the space owners are landlords. So we've sort of broken down this whole fear and this liability in our litigious culture of who's owning what, and really created sole ownership for all the people in play. We've also included one thing that's really cut down on myself and our team is we've included a chat bot on our website to sort of take on all of the questions we get from practitioners on our network, from owners on our network, and potential clients. And so AI has really become it's really alleviated a lot of time, as you mentioned. And so I think that really makes way for more profitability and focusing on the priorities for business. So with more streamlined workflows, we can really manage more clients and services. And I think in the aesthetic space, and for our business specifically, it means more renters, and labor cost reduction. Providers can earn higher margins and offer more cost flexibility to patients. Everyone wins by earning higher profits and carrying less risk. So this whole idea of automation and reducing the busy work that we all get caught up in our day-to-day, it enables better CRM systems, better patient management, automated scheduling. Tracy, as you mentioned, all of those things that a practitioner needs to spend the time to grow their business and be a flourishing business, AI and automation can do a lot of that work for them. So we really see, only an upside from this perspective, from profitability and time management. Why have one investor when you can have 20 invested in profiting from their own income, from their own outcomes? So, it's exciting. And I think the more we can encourage people to sort of grasp this AI and automation that we know it's not going anywhere, to take the baby steps to start to wade into the pool and get familiar with these tools that are all at our fingertips, there's a huge outcome for everyone to work more efficiently, work smarter, and not harder.
Thank you, Shannon. Yeah, and baby steps, that's the key. I remember the first time I looked at AI, I grabbed a bunch of different platforms, and I asked the same question on each platform. I said, tell me a story about Michael Walker and Capstone Coaching. And I was a rock star. But I was a rock star in one area. I was involved in sports, and then over here I was, and I was so intrigued and what I looked for, what are the common denominators that I'm seeing this, that they're getting right. And that's to be able to figure out, okay, well, that's how that, so they've gathered that. And it was kind of just like a reverse engineering of what I received. So, it can be simple as that. Just try it. You'd be amazed at what you'll find, or what you might not find. But as we kind of wrap up, Doctor, I'm going to head to you for a last question we have for tonight. But it's, what advice do you have for practitioners looking to integrate AI into their practice without disrupting their current workflows? That's a great question, and clearly an important one.
Before I answer that, I want to give a definition that's kind of a lay definition of artificial intelligence. I don't believe we covered it, but before I answer that, I want to make sure people understand what artificial intelligence is. It's so big. Like, we talk about it like it's one thing, but it's very, very broad. And so I pulled up a definition. Artificial intelligence enables machines to learn from experience, adapt to new inputs, and execute tasks resembling human capabilities. This is very important because I keep talking about AI agents, but there are so many other ways to use AI that will not necessarily disrupt your patient flow, your operational flow, or anything like that. And so I want to give just an example of an AI tool that I use that helps me even in practice. So as you guys know, many of us those who are attending probably are practitioners, or either you work with practitioners, and we always want to stay abreast of what's changing in our industry. There's always changes happening. There's always new research. You can simply use perplexity.ai just to stay abreast of what is happening from a peer-reviewed scholarly journal in your area, in your specialty. Even if you just decided to pull up articles that are published within a certain time period and plug that into ChatGPT, just so that you can interpret any of the latest changes in your specialty. Okay, so one of the things that I do, for example, is I focus on hormone optimization. So there's a lot of new research about testosterone since the Women's Health Initiative, which talked about that hormones causes cancer. Now we're changing to this different space. And so it's very important for me to stay abreast of what's happening in the literature, and not just on somebody's blog, but a peer-reviewed journal article, right? And so you guys can just do something simple like that starting out, just to stay abreast of what's going on there. That can go from there to like so many different things. You can use that in your newsletters. You can use that for marketing. You can create content, and the list goes on and on with how I use it. But that could be a start. If you do have systems in place that are administrative, they're standardized, you overall like your process, and like Tracy said, it's not trash. And you didn't say that, Tracy, but I'm saying it because that's what you meant. And if it's not like trash, you know you like it, you know it's a good process, but you want to create something that is seamless and that is automated, you can literally take that process and plug it into something like ChatGPT, and then even ask ChatGPT, how is this process? Is this good? Is there anything you would make different? You would do different in this process? And then give it the objective, like, I want to automate this and hand this off to an AI tool. Do you have suggestions of what tool I can use? You guys, there are thousands and thousands of tools that are out there right now. So you need to narrow it down. You can go to ChatGPT or you can go to Gemini. There's so many other large language models out there, but you can use those to simplify the process of how you're going to standardize this, and then pull in some of those tools that they suggest to automate a specific process. I have a lot of automation, so I don't want to overwhelm you guys, but I just want to give you context on, like, there's so many things that you can do leveraging AI to simplify your life. The average solopreneur spends about 20 hours a week on administrative tasks. Imagine if you could cut that down just by using AI, right? So there's so many tools that you could use. So I don't want to overwhelm you guys, but I do want you to know that this is a very large field that we're talking about. So you have to narrow down on what the one thing is that you know you need to improve or that you want to focus on that will free up your time, especially if you're a small business owner, because you really need to be focused on things that are revenue drivers in your business.
Dr. Jones, thank you. What a great way to just bring us to a wrap-up point there of just bite size and just being, it's something new. We don't have to be, we don't have to know it all right away. We don't have to be experts at it, but to your point too, it's doing the homework, doing the research, but also in front of you on this screen, you have 4 people that are in the field that are experts at this. You're going to have their contact information, be able to reach out to them. They'll be, and I just encourage you to connect with them. Sometimes it takes somebody, if you need a little grease in an engine to get it running, and you need a little fuel. And the fuel is really the systems, but the grease is very much the sort of work that these folks have done in understanding and applying AI and to their practices. But I need to shift gears here, and this has just been, because I know we could go on for a lot longer than this. I could just tell right now, but I do need to change gears. And I just want to wrap our time up together. But as you recall, I did promise you a very interesting gift, and here it is. We're talking about all these, we're thinking about smart technology, AI, all these things. Marketing is in the same league. It evolves. I think Google changes its algorithm at minimum 6,000 times a year. It's just trying to stay relevant, stay top page, stay in touch is such a big deal. And so the gift that we have for you, it's a gift from the founder of the Business of Aesthetics Expert Panel webinar. His name is Narain Arulraja, and Narain is the CEO of Equimarketing. And Equimarketing is a digital marketing organization for doctors and specifically medical professionals. As a token of our appreciation of your time and participation, Narain is offering you a free marketing strategy meeting with Lila Stone, who is the marketing director of Equimarketing. Lila has established herself as a trusted expert in digital marketing and is passionate about empowering medical professionals with the marketing tools and knowledge to stand out in a very competitive field. You can see in front of you, she has considerable specializations. So I say this is a gift from Narain, and we really want to encourage you to take the opportunity of this. You're gonna, in the chat, there will be a link there. You can go ahead and click on that link, and you can, to sign up, you could scan it with your phone. You could scan that code you see in front of you. But I do want to just throw just a couple of questions. In pretty much everything we've been talking about, with any of these times of knowledge and sharing knowledge and best practices, in particular taking up in this opportunity, the first question I always ask myself is, what's at risk to do it? And what's at risk to take some of the advice you've heard from some of the folks tonight, reaching out to them? What's the risk of looking at taking this marketing strategy meeting up, picking that up? It's just your time. There's no cost. Initially, there's no cost. It's just simply the idea is to be able to understand better what's happening. I think what's more important is the second question. What's at risk not to? It's kind of what we've been talking about today. And I think I just want to encourage you to go ahead and take up this opportunity for this marketing strategy meeting. I've heard nothing but great things from folks that have done that. And as I say, there's no hooks or tricks in it. It's just simply an opportunity that Narain wants to extend to you. So I will leave that. And so, first of all, let me thank our expert panel tonight, Chad Schiffman, Tracy Mancuso, Dr. Kiona Jones, and Shannon Seabaron. So much insight, best practices, and certainly actionable content. If I was going to sum that up, I'd say you collectively have made the complex simple, the hidden visible, and the difficult easy. Thank you so much for doing that. And I hope that our attendees have captured thoughts and are going to be reaching out to you to complete those thoughts. Second, I want to thank all of our attendees for the privilege of your time and your participation. Without you, we don't grow together and set each other up for success. A reminder to like, share, and review us on your favorite social media. We love likes and we love followers. And you can go ahead and be a part of someone else's success. So, until next time, please keep striving for excellence and exceptional patient care. And on behalf of our panelists, have a wonderful evening and an even more awesome week ahead. Thank you.